What the hell? What evidence are you talking about? Smith was more flustered than I expected. He wasn't looking at me. It's the first time he's ever looked away from me. Oh, you came today, that's rare. Mr. Smith peered into my face. Did you not come yesterday because it rained? Or did you oversleep on the train? I don't answer, because I know Mr. Smith isn't waiting for my answer. I'm John Davis, born early, with a late birthday. Even when I entered junior high, I was still only 12 years old back then. Mr. Smith was much taller than me and seemed to be good at studying too. Seemed to be, because I don't really know much. It was a private combined junior and senior high school, where only motivated students gathered. But I couldn't fit in at school, and even in the second semester, I was still going and not going to school, repeating my visits to the infirmary. School's not interesting for you, right? But you show up just to show you are motivated. Mr. Smith keeps stalking beside me, but no one pays attention to it. Everyone is desperate about their own things before the exams. Mr. Smith should just ignore me and study too. I'd much rather be ignored than have these meaningless words thrown at me. I felt like I was being pestered by a fly. And yet, you're Davis, right? Don't you remember me? The lifespan of a fly is only about a month, but Mr. Smith was still alive. That's right, he's human after all. He'll live dozens of times longer than a fly. I sighed inwardly. It's been over 15 years since we met again, from the time when I thought it was annoying to be entangled in my classroom seat. It was in the corridor of a university hospital. Smith was in a white coat, with a badge on his chest that read Lab Technician, Bob Smith. Hey, we were in junior high together, weren't we? Well, you didn't go to school much, so maybe you don't know. Even if we were in the same grade, you hardly spoke to anyone. You probably don't have any friends since you were a high school dropout, right? What are you doing now? Oh, you probably don't want to be asked that. You had no motivation for studying or sports. Did you take some vocational training? It's probably hard to find a job these days as a high school dropout, right? It's the same as back then. I don't feel like answering. He doesn't want to hear my answer. He just wants to throw words at me as he pleases and laugh at me for being stupid. You haven't changed, Mr. Smith. Don't lump me in with a junior high kid. I'm a lab technician now. I thought a vocational school would be good enough, but I decided to go to the clinical laboratory science department of a national medical university. This way, I'll be a medical school graduate. I graduated and came here. It's been about 6 or 7 years now. What about you? There aren't any drugs here to raise your IQ. Oh, maybe it's that. You know, like psychiatry. Are you getting depressed and pessimistic about the future? Geez, he sure can talk a lot. Maybe this guy should become a politician. Well, no one would support a speech like this. Dear Davis, how long are you gonna be doing whatever? Hurry up and get changed. It's an emergency patient. The one who called out from the other end of the corridor was Nurse Taylor. Okay, I'm coming now. Huh? Doctor, I'm busy so I'm going. I left Smith behind and left the scene. It was snowing that day. When I left the house, the sky was cloudy, but it started snowing before I got to junior high. I should have stayed home. I regretted it as I walked, on my way to school for the first time in a month. When I looked at the shoebox, my indoor shoes were gone. I couldn't find them even when I looked in the empty shoeboxes. Where could they have gone? The faculty room is at the end of the second floor. I wonder if my homeroom teacher is here. Maybe they're in a morning meeting. I sighed, went around to the front entrance with my shoes still on, and went to the administrative office nearby to say my indoor shoes were gone. The janitor said, well, for now just wear these, and lend me some guest slippers. I put them on, but I was still debating whether to just go back home after all. But I know my parents have been worried since I stopped going to school. They say the obvious things, that now is an important time. They probably can't help but say it, even though they know I hate it. Yesterday, my mom finally cried. Even if I can graduate junior high without going since it's compulsory education, there's no point in graduating if I don't learn anything. Remembering my mother's voice and her lamenting face, I made up my mind that I had to go after all, and entered the classroom. Hey, even if it's been a while, are you seriously being treated like a guest? That's hilarious. Were you told to come to school, that they'll give you special treatment as a guest? Smith started messing with me again when he saw me. Did you take your indoor shoes home because you didn't plan on coming back? It's been so long, you probably forgot you didn't have indoor shoes at school, right? They weren't there. They weren't there. Oh, that's too bad. Maybe they were disposed of because no one was wearing them and they thought they weren't needed. Seeing Smith's face grinning gleefully, I thought he might have done it. But I have no proof. Second period was in the science room. I grabbed my textbook and pencil case and left the classroom. The snow kept falling. The tips of my feet were getting cold in the slippers. I slowly followed everyone up the stairs, and after going up a few steps, I suddenly stumbled and hit my face and arm hard on the stairs. Hey, what's up? You okay? Watch where you're going. I heard Smith's voice, laughing and talking casually, and a girl's scream. I sat down on the stairs, unable to stand. Someone had stepped on my slippers from behind. I still think Smith did it. My nose was bleeding and my forehead hurt. You, gross, said a boy's voice. You should go to the nurse's office, someone said. The starting bell rang, and I was sitting alone on the stairs. A teacher heading to class found me and took me to the nurse's office. But an ambulance was called right away, and I was admitted to the hospital. My nose was broken. They said if left like that, it would fuse crooked, so I had surgery to fix it. And I never went back to school after that. It was winter of 7th grade. It was a combined school, but I didn't go on to high school either. It's even more annoying that Smith still remembers me, even though I hadn't seen him since then. I want to cut ties with him. Urged by Nurse Taylor, I hurried into the locker room. I had business at the bank, so I snuck out of the hospital during my lunch break to go. I put on my white coat, rushed to the ER, and treated a patient brought in from a car accident. I'm on call all night. It's gonna be a long day. I've been working here for 6 months. I'm in charge of emergency surgery, and apparently Smith is in internal medicine. It's a big hospital, and we never had a chance to run into each other before. We could have just stayed not knowing each other, but I guess bad connections really do exist. The on-call day is long, but the next day is even longer. During my nap in the early morning, a kid was brought in who apparently rolled down the stairs while half asleep, and I had to jump up in a hurry. When you're in charge of emergencies, you realize how closely this world borders on danger. Furniture, stairs, things we use every day without thinking can hurt people. Mothers who bring their kids in crying and cry again when they find out their child is okay. It's a place where all sorts of human emotions swirl. There are quite a few troublesome patients. Especially drunk guys causing a ruckus are a real pain. If they were forced to drink, that's one thing, but they drink on their own, get wasted, yell abuse at the hospital, and harass the nurses. I wonder if they're carrying something so unbearable. When people lose their health, they desperately try to get it back, but even when healthy, living isn't easy. As I returned my lunch tray and left the cafeteria, a paper cup of coffee was held out in front of me. It was Smith, my bad luck charm. Looks like he was waiting for me. I'm sick of it. Who the hell are you, anyway? Smith rudely asked me, as I took the coffee without even saying thanks. I hadn't heard a peep from you since you dropped out of high school and disappeared. You never come to reunions either. Are you that interested in me? Of course I am. This school refuser kid became a doctor at a university hospital. I'd love to hear your success story of how you got there. I asked Smith a question in return. You got any siblings, Smith? Huh? Oh, yeah. I got an older brother, a year older. He used to be called a child prodigy, but now he's just a regular office worker. I'm relieved he doesn't run his mouth off to me anymore. Why? I thought, so there are brothers like that too. Gradually, memories of that time come back to me. I had an older brother too. I said that, sat down in a break room chair, and started talking. I had a brother 3 years older. It was around the time I was about to have my elementary school graduation ceremony. My brother, in turn, was about to have his junior high graduation. During winter break, my brother went to cram school on his bike as usual. I went to play with my friends and was waiting on the sidewalk for apple pie to be cooked. That's when I happened to see my brother get into an accident at the intersection. Big brother. I don't think I've ever yelled as loud as I did then, before or since. But even though he was in pain, my brother stayed calm. He reassured me that he was okay, not to worry, until the ambulance came. My hands were shaking so much I couldn't use my cell phone, so my friend called my parents for me. My brother fractured his left femur and was admitted to the hospital right away. He had surgery and started walking therapy in less than a month. Everyone thought he was recovering well, but he'd get out of breath as soon as he moved. Because he'd been lying still in bed, everyone thought his strength had decreased. My brother put his all into rehab for high school life. He was smart. He said he wanted to be a doctor in the future. My dad is just a regular office worker, but my uncle is a lawyer. Dad was always proud of my uncle. He said my uncle was smart from a young age and learned all sorts of things before being taught in school. He'd encourage us with a smile, saying we have that blood in us too, so we should work hard. My uncle was married but had no kids. Because of that, the 4 adults doted on us to their heart's content, and we never felt dissatisfied growing up. We never dreamed something like this would happen. One day, my brother suddenly collapsed during rehab and passed away just like that. The doctor explained it was acute heart failure, but the death certificate we received later said cerebral infarction. Why was there a discrepancy in the cause? My father insisted it was medical malpractice and tried to do an autopsy, but my mother absolutely refused and had him cremated. With my uncle's help, my father, who couldn't accept it, filed a lawsuit, but without a body, there wasn't enough crucial evidence. My parents' relationship turned awful over my brother's cremation. Everyone was mourning my brother and feeling the same pain, but it turned into hatred and reflected throughout the house. That's around when I stopped being able to go to school. If someone had to live, it should have been my smart brother. Why, of all people, was my promising brother taken? Every time I saw my parents lamenting, grieving, and sometimes cursing at each other, I felt like living was a sin, and I had no motivation to do anything. A lawyer isn't a medical expert. My uncle struggled quite a bit. He devoured medical books and got an orthopedic surgeon introduced to him through work connections. That doctor, after hearing everything, said it might have been a pulmonary embolism. A blood clot forms and flows into the lungs, clogging the capillaries there. Lawyers who handle medical malpractice cases apparently told him pulmonary embolisms are hard to prove as doctor negligence and there's no chance of winning. But my uncle didn't give up. He had to win this lawsuit and move his brother's family's feelings forward. At this rate, none of them would recover from that accident. My uncle later told me he was desperate out of a sense of mission. My brother didn't slack on studying even while hospitalized, and he diligently kept a diary too. In it, there were descriptions of getting out of breath just climbing stairs, or feeling as breathless walking as if he'd sprinted with all his might. A college student who shared his room remembered that too. My uncle thoroughly investigated the results of each test my brother took, and became convinced the doctor was hiding the real cause of death. And so, the occurrence of a pulmonary embolism not recorded in the medical charts was proven, and he won the case. Apparently, a blood clot had developed in a vein in his thigh while resting during hospitalization. If it had been caught in advance and treated, he should have been able to recover. 2.5 years had passed since the accident when the verdict was handed down. The day he won the case, my uncle told us, "Even if we win, what happened can't be undone. For the sake of the child whose dreams were cut short, live in a way you won't be ashamed of." Both my parents were crying. I couldn't feel happy about winning. It hurt that my brother wasn't coming back. My uncle handed me my brother's diary. He told me to read it, and on the page he opened to, it was written about me. "John is kind, but he's too kind, so he might struggle when he goes out into society. But he has no ill will. He's an honest guy. I try to beat everyone at everything and study with that goal. But John has a kind heart, so he probably won't live that way. I'm envious of that. I've looked after John as his big brother since we were kids, but I think I did more things to get in our parents' good graces than things I did thinking of my little brother. When I remember those times, I feel guilty towards John. Our parents love me just because I'm good at studying, but I sometimes wonder if I'm a conniving person. I think John, who is kind to others without any ulterior motives, is admirable. I think John is more suited to being a doctor, But he says studying is hard and he doesn't want to be somewhere people are in pain or going to the other world. That's just like John. I'll become a doctor, and if anyone in the family gets sick, I'll cure them. I think that's how I'll repay them. If I don't forget this feeling, I think I'll be able to avoid becoming arrogant even if I really do become a doctor someday. It was the first time I knew my brother's true feelings. I'd never thought about this. My brother wasn't arrogant at all, or calculating. He was truly kind to me. It was fun being with him. That's proof that my brother made me happy. Both my parents apologized to me. They said they'd been so caught up with my brother, who was no longer in this world. They'd lost sight of me right in front of them. But that wasn't it. It wasn't my brother's fault or my parents' fault that I stopped being able to go to school. If I'd wanted to go to school, I probably would have gone even if it meant transferring. I was just tired of living. My brother really worked hard at studying. He'd wake up early to go to school, finish morning study before class, and stay late after school for independent study. On weekends he'd go to cram school from the afternoon. When he was home, he was always reading. Dad would look at my hard-working brother with pride, and Mom would wake up early to prepare breakfast and even go pick him up from cram school late at night when the weather was bad. Meanwhile, I didn't even have a dream for the future yet. I wasn't lazy, but I had no passion either. But I was still accepted because I was the second son. Dad projected his relationship with my uncle onto me and my brother, and said it was fine as long as I could live without feeling resentful in front of my smart brother. I didn't feel envious of my brother either. I think I grew up carefree, if I do say so myself, and I think that's thanks to my parents. Even when I saw the dinner table filled with easily digestible foods centered around my brother before exams, I never felt ignored. But my mother apologized for that. In the end, she blamed herself, saying that discrimination was the reason I became a school refuser. Our child, who had his life cut short through no fault of his own. That fact was painful, and not wanting to inflict any more wounds on her son's body, she went through with the cremation. That backfired and the lawsuit didn't proceed as hoped. In the midst of unbearable frustration, my mother's sense of guilt grew stronger, and she was driven into a corner. My father, who drove her further into a corner despite knowing that. In front of my brother's portrait, we looked back on those 2.5 years and shared our respective thoughts. I felt like it was the first time I'd really faced my parents. I want to live life for my brother too, become a son my parents can be proud of, a little brother my big brother won't be ashamed of. That's when I recovered from being a school refuser. My classmates had already entered high school. I started over with junior high studies and went to the UK for high school. My lawyer uncle's wife was raised in London and has family there. They have 2 daughters a little older than me. My childless uncle and aunt took our family to London several times and let us spend time together. I went to the UK to change my environment, learned English and the ins and outs of English life from the doctor in the family, and they oversaw my studies too. Thanks to that, I smoothly progressed through high school and college, transferred in as an undergraduate, and graduated from medical school in America. I was 2 years behind my classmates. It's already been 4 years since I obtained this life as a doctor. Based on my experience as a school refuser, I thought about studying psychology and becoming a psychiatrist. But when I hear about people's misfortunes, it drags me down and makes me feel bad too. I was told it wasn't a good fit for me, so I gave up and chose emergency surgery. Patients who look pained, enduring the hurt when they're brought in, walk out smiling when they leave the hospital after receiving appropriate treatment and recovering. I feel a sense of reward from that change, but even now I remember the scene of that accident, and I can't eat apple pie. I don't ride bicycles either, but I don't think I need to force myself to face that. I think the fact that I'm carrying that leads to compassion for others. Dr. Davis, your break is over. Let's go. Nurse Taylor called out to me. She's one of the most beautiful nurses at this hospital. Smith brought me coffee and we were drinking it together. If you want coffee, we have delicious coffee at our nurse's station too. Smith looks at Nurse Taylor without a word. I stand up, coffee cup in hand, and leave the cafeteria with Nurse Taylor. Nurse Taylor says Smith has repeatedly invited her out to eat, but he's totally not my type. It's not like I'm a volunteer. There's no need to force myself to go, right? Well, yeah, that's true. It probably wouldn't even be fun to eat with someone like that. Dr. Davis, how about having a meal with me? Think it'd be delicious. Huh? I feel like even just eating fast food somewhere would be super delicious with you, Dr. Davis. Won't you go out with me once? I gotta confirm if that's true. When I was in UK, I thought British were a race of people who clearly say yes or no, but Nurse Taylor is just as direct. And yet, she's kind to people. When a patient who's been hospitalized for a long time is discharged, she sends them off with a smile, then says things like I won't be able to receive that granny's consolation anymore, or it's too bad hospitals can't see patients living healthily. She once got depressed, saying she wouldn't be able to see Leon, the seeing eye dog a patient brought, because of her love for dogs. She's 2 years older than me, but I find that sensitive side behind her reliable appearance charming. But when I think of my own lackluster past, I can't really tell her how I feel. I'm younger, and she's my senior at work too. I just can't be confident about it. Are you really going out with Taylor? One day, out of the blue, I got a message from Smith on WhatsApp. It can't be helped that we're connected since there's a hospital staff WhatsApp group, but just how far is he gonna keep this up? She said let's go eat together sometime. Did you invite her? She invited me. Said even fast food is fine. Let's go together. Huh? Don't make me laugh. Taylor told me Smith showed her an invitation to a hotel dinner. It's one of the most exclusive hotels in the city. I guess Smith likes Taylor that much. Don't look down on me or the nurses just 'cause you're a doctor. I'm not looking down on anyone. Have I ever done anything to you on my own? You're the one who always starts talking to me and saying whatever you want. The messages stopped after that. That's right. I've never done anything to Smith. If anything, I wish he wasn't even around. He's the one barging into my space with his shoes on. On my way home from work, I visited a certain town for the first time in a while. I exited the subway station and headed for the intersection, and there was still a chicken restaurant there. You can see the intersection right in front of you from the window seats of this restaurant. In the winter, apple pie stand would appear there. Straight ahead was the cram school my brother went to, and to the left was the way to our school. My brother got into the accident at this intersection. I had one promise with my brother. When he asked me what I wanted as a graduation gift, I said I wanted to eat the chicken from this place. At the time, I had terrible acne, and my mom had banned me from eating fried foods. So they never appeared on our dinner table. But I really want to eat it. Then let's go together after the graduation ceremony. It'll be my treat. In exchange, you absolutely can tell Mom. I know, but we never came here. I couldn't come to this place either. But when it was decided I'd go to the UK, I stood at this intersection intending to say goodbye to my brother before leaving States. It's hard to believe my brother is under that grave, but I don't want to think his soul is still wandering around here either. I just feel closer to my brother here than at the temple grave. What I wanted him to buy me wasn't a set menu, just the chicken. He said I could eat as much as I wanted. My brother liked it too, so I wonder how much we would have eaten if we'd come here together. Today, on my way home from work, I stopped by this restaurant and bought several pieces of chicken. I've already moved out, and I put my hands together in front of my brother's Buddhist altar less often. But today, I got the idea to eat this with my brother in my room. I don't know the reason why. On a whim, I got back on the subway and came here. For my young brother, I should get cola instead of beer. No, maybe it's better to enjoy beer together at the age he would be if he were alive. I was thinking about that as I left the restaurant with the chicken. If I get on the subway with this, the smell might spread a lot. Maybe I should take a taxi. As I was walking, thinking the driver might hate it, Smith came up the subway stairs. Am I drawn to this guy? Or do I draw him to me? Hey, what's up? In a place like this? Chicken. Don't you have any near your house? A doctor eating chain restaurant chicken alone at night. That's hilarious. Oh, or is it that? Did you come to scope it out before inviting Taylor? Smith laughed. Before I knew it, I'd asked, you got time? Meeting him here today of all days. How long do I have to live annoyed by him? I want to end my relationship with this clingy guy who sticks to me persistently like a fly, no matter how much I brush him off. That's what I thought. Looking back, maybe my brother gave me a push. What, you want to talk about something? Should we drink together? Nah, it won't take long. It's my family's death anniversary. Smith was at a loss for words at my answer and followed me into the cafe right in front of us. You treated me at the hospital the other day, so. Saying that, he held out coffee and we sat facing each other. What? You wanted to talk? Hey, I've been wanting to ask for a while, but why did you look down on me, Smith? Huh? In junior high, you made fun of me, said stupid, pointless things while grinning, and laughed by yourself, didn't you? What was the point of that? The point? Nothing really. You knew I hated it, right? It's the same now too. I've never had a shred of goodwill towards you. So why do you persistently bother me? Because my grades were bad. Because I was a school refuser. I thought the world would be so much better if you just weren't in it. Then I ran into you at the hospital, and you're suddenly back to that attitude from 15 years ago. You were laughing thinking I was a high school dropout, right? Making a face like I'm a lab technician. Smith's face gradually turned sullen. So what if you're a high school dropout? What's wrong with that? I think a highly educated person like you who looks down on others while being proud of their own job and indulging in self-satisfaction is way more childish and lacking in education. What the hell are you trying to say? I've never tried to look down on anyone or thought about beating someone to feel satisfied. I've never tried to boast about being a doctor either. I just want to make people healthy. That's why I studied and gained skills. I get money in exchange for that. That's all. It's no different from earning money by selling chicken at this restaurant. That's what I think. Even becoming a laboratory technician isn't easy, and I don't think either one is above the other compared to a doctor. We're both treatment staff. You know what I mean. Our way of thinking is completely different, right? We're like oil and water. I don't want to mix with you or be in the same container as you. Don't come near me anymore. Got it? If you spread rumors about how I was a pitiful guy who refused to go to school and couldn't study back then, go ahead. I can spread plenty of rumors about you too. You're the one who broke my nose. What the hell? What evidence are you talking about? Smith was more flustered than I expected. You only know about what happened at school, but there were people who came to my house and testified too. We settled it quietly cause it was something a kid did. My lawyer uncle was furious too. Smith wasn't looking at me. It's the first time he's ever looked away from me. Even though it was all a bluff, it seems my hunch from 15 years ago was right on the mark. From now on, let's be strangers. I'm counting on you. See ya. I left the cafe with my bag of chicken. I felt refreshed, like I'd defeated him in front of my brother. That's right, there's no need to avoid it. I should just clearly say I hate what I hate. Nothing bad will happen because of that. I felt like my brother was telling me that. I put a mountain of chicken in front of my brother's picture and ate to my heart's content. After that, the days passed by quietly for a while, but one morning there was a serious report at the morning assembly. A patient had filed a medical malpractice lawsuit. Apparently, during a blood test, the injection needle damaged a nerve in the patient's arm. The patient is a middle-aged piano teacher. She teaches piano to children, and some of her students are aiming for music college. The patient visited this hospital last year when she wasn't feeling well. A clinical lab technician drew her blood, and at that time she felt numbness in her arm. Since then, she hasn't been able to put strength in her left hand and can't play the piano. The injection needle damaged a nerve in her left arm, and the sensation in her fingers decreased. It's a fatal impairment for her profession. A lawsuit seeking nearly $10 million in damages has been filed against the hospital and clinical lab technician. Her future income that she would have earned as a piano teacher has been cut off, and it's interfering with her daily life. They said there's probably no chance of winning. That clinical lab technician was Smith. After hearing about the lawsuit, he apparently resigned voluntarily. But it'll probably be a long time before the verdict is handed down. He was always a talkative patient and apparently hard to please. Knowing Smith, he might have treated the patient briskly. But we're the ones who made the mistake. No matter how much compensation the patient receives, if the disability remains, it means we've burdened that person for life. In any case, never forget that you are always responsible for people's lives and health. and that you also have the potential to make people unhealthy. The director said that at the end to conclude the meeting. Smith's nose that was always stuck up in the air has probably been cut down to size, but that doesn't mean I feel good about it. If one of my hands became disabled, I wouldn't even be able to work. Hands play an important role in life. I hope Smith apologizes sincerely. I always thought he'd do something eventually. The head nurse declared bluntly. People who work based on their mood aren't suited for jobs dealing with people, especially dealing with sick people. Even if we're not directly involved, it's undeniable that this will become known as a scandal for the hospital. It was a really heavy morning. Doctor, when are you gonna ask me out to dinner? The one who whispered to me was Nurse Taylor. At times like this, you can't let it get to you. Nothing good comes from dragging out a bad mood and getting depressed yourself. So, where do you want to go? Do you like Italian, doctor? I know a great place. Italian, sure, that sounds good. You know the intersection on Oak Street, with that big Buckstop building? Oh, there. At the intersection where my brother had his accident, there's a 10-story big Buckstop. I never thought it would come up in conversation. Right next to that Buckstop building, there's a trendy Italian restaurant. I heard the wine and food are delicious. I always thought I'd like to go there with you sometime, doctor. I felt a bit pressured by Nurse Taylor saying that with a carefree smile, but I didn't feel bad about it. Maybe I'll tell her the heroic tale of how I told Smith off at the cafe at that intersection the other day while we have dinner. I felt like doing that. I can acknowledge my lackluster past self and talk about it with confidence. I was able to feel that way. After finishing work, we changed clothes and headed to our destination separately. The head nurse is pretty strict. I was standing in front of the Buckstop building, looking at the pharmacy across the street. In the winter, kids returning from cram school or regular school would crowd in front of the apple pie shop. The cram school my brother went to was on the upper floors of that building. My cram school was further past the intersection. My brother's cram school was a well-known one that only the cream of the crop geniuses attended. As I was standing there thinking about that, Nurse Taylor suddenly appeared beside me. What were you thinking about? Oh, nothing much. You know, I couldn't come here for the longest time. Huh? It's been over 10 years, but a boy I liked got into an accident here. On his bike, on the way to cram school. I unintentionally looked down at Nurse Taylor. See that building across the street? There used to be a cram school there, and I went to it. My parents were strict about studying, so I hated it. But the senior guy was there, so that was my only joy. He was tall and really smart. I was in a different grade, so I never even talked to him. I just admired him from afar. I heard he got in an accident here and was hospitalized, but of course I couldn't go visit him. I waited thinking he'd recover and come back, but he passed away. I heard the treatment didn't go well. I was so shocked, I couldn't go to cram school anymore. I was told to become a doctor, but I lost my motivation to study and got depressed. It's been so many years since then, but I've been avoiding coming here. I even thought I'd never come here again. But I realized if I kept thinking that way, the senior guy probably wouldn't be happy either. I suddenly got that feeling, you know. That senior guy has been in heaven for ages, but here I am still moping around for no reason. I thought he'd probably hate that. I looked at Nurse Taylor without a word. So I thought, if I'm gonna come here, I want it to be for a happy reason. I looked around and found out there's a really popular restaurant here, and I thought it'd be nice if I could invite you, doctor. I'm sorry if it's a bother. That's not it. I couldn't find the right words and instinctively grabbed Nurse Taylor's hand. I have so much I want to talk to you about. Let's go. That's right. There's no need to hesitate. I should clearly tell the person I like that I like them. As if my brother was pushing me forward, I walked with her through the crowd.